Bangladesh, one of the poorest countries in the world, most densely populated, and they seem to have this, positive economic trajectory, and you see they're starting to manufacture, a lot of clothing, and it seems to be going good, kind of like the China model. And then boom, you have all this political stuff going on, and yeah, I mean, they do say the Bangladesh people are very resilient,
Oh,
but it's
don't
like
they
how
though? Yeah.
it's like how resilient must they be?
Exactly. I think that's exactly right. How resilient must they be? I mean, it's a country that, it's in the Bay of Bengal. So we have all of the tropical storms, the cyclones, Bangladesh, we always say is the canary in the coal mine of global capitalism, climate change. Whatever they're facing now in Houston or central Germany or wherever, floods and droughts and whatever. We had it first in Bangladesh. We've had all these crises for years and years, going back possibly, almost a century. We've been affected by climate change in really quite serious ways. So, Bangladesh really became a country after in a period of great crisis, lots and lots of major disasters. There was a huge big cyclone in 1970 that killed 500,000 people. It's like the worst disaster of its kind ever in world history. We had a massive famine that killed 1.5 million people. And, it's always been a kind of irrelevant place geopolitically until recently, perhaps. Now China has taken it seriously. It has certain geographical advantages, but irrelevant geopolitically in history because it has no natural resources. It's just got people. We've just got people. And so, of course, labor intensive export manufacturing was the obvious pathway. But, in the 70s, everyone thought we were going to do socialism and so on. It took a while before they embarked on the kind of economic development pathway that they're on now. And that's very dominated by ready-made garments, by T-shirts and sweaters in particular. I was looking at the numbers today because, the tariffs, Bangladesh was hit really hard by Trump's crazy tariffs. 34%, I think.
On Bangladesh?
Yeah. And you say one of the poorest countries in the world, but actually it's been growing so fast. There has been some, overstatement of how successful it's been economically, but not much. Really,
But I think I heard 2026 it's gonna lose its, I think, like,
it's not going to be a least developed country. Yeah, that's right. That's been coming for some time. So we're no longer one of the least developed countries. We're growing quite fast. Infrastructure is quite amazing. Human development actually is one of the areas of great success in Bangladesh, which is not a great GDP story, but, people are healthier. They have, sanitation. Their children are immunized. Women have access to, reproductive health and so on, much more than in comparative countries. We started off in 71 when we became an independent country. All of our indicators were much lower than Pakistan and India. We broke away from Pakistan was the story of 71 essentially. We were East Pakistan, and then there was 1,000 miles of India in between us. So West Pakistan, East Pakistan, 1,000 miles of India. I mean, whose idea for a country was that? That's just insane.
Two divided countries.
Yeah, two wings. And so we broke away. All our indicators were much worse than Pakistan and India back in those days. Much, much worse. And, and now mostly better on most things than Pakistan and India. And both Pakistan and India, were much richer countries. Now our GDP per capita is higher, I think, than both, depending on your metrics. But if you take, for instance, IMF data, then they seem to suggest, GDP per capita is higher than most. Human development indicators better than most. Other ways as well, as you say, resilience. We still have a lot of disasters, cyclones, floods, all kinds of things. And they kind of manage it. They're kind of so used to it. The government and civil society and, the general public kind of pull together. It's quite remarkable to see.
Yeah, I was actually reading about, because your economy is very labor intensive, this sort of gives power to the people. The government needs the people in work and to be somewhat content, because if you are in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, which is like essentially an oil state, that's mainly centered around machinery and capital, and the people aren't so important.
That's right.
So it's a lot easier in those countries to suppress political parties and have people be
Disappeared.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
just a bit. I think that's incredibly insightful. Yes, you're absolutely right. You know, a government that has no natural resources, but its people must
Treat the people well.
must treat the people well, must invest in them to some extent, mustn't allow them to die from famine and storms and so on, because that's all they've got. And you know, it's a bit the natural resource curse, I think, is part of it. We don't have that, and in some ways that has been a positive thing. And in particular, I would say, you know, one of the things that Bangladesh did early on, from about the mid-70s, was really start to focus on women, and in particular rural poor women, because if you're not supporting them in any way, they're the people who bring up the family, right? Who bring up the children. They're the people who reproduce society, literally. And so Bangladesh really, after the famine in 74, I think, they really started to realize, actually, we really need to focus on women. There was also a big, you know, debate about fertility, about population control. Bangladeshi women were having 6, 7 babies at that time, many of whom didn't live very long. Now I think it's, what is the total fertility rate? It's 2 or something like that. You know, people have 1 or 2 babies mostly.
Yeah.
But and they take care of them well, which you can't do if you've got 7 babies and no money, right? So they invested in women, and you know, Professor Yunus, who now runs the interim government for the next 6 months or 9 months or whatever, he's one of these people who set up the Grameen Bank. The Grameen Bank was the microfinance big innovation that really basically gave small loans to poor rural women, like a bank, but without any collateral. The collateral was always that these poor rural women would be too scared not to pay back, so they would pay back because they were powerless, right? But they, you know, used it to feed their families in the bad times, or to invest in small businesses, or to do all kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
And that's really, you know, in Bangladesh at least, that's been remarkable. There's a lot of criticism about microfinance in other parts of the world, but in Bangladesh at least, yeah, it's.
I think in general it has been a lot more beneficial than formal finance, and it has impacted a lot of regions in the global south, even outside of Bangladesh.